Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday. I was just saying to my next guest that I was going to try not to move around too much while talking or play with my hair, and I've already broken both of those rules. So here we are. Welcome to the Rebecca Babcock Coaching Client Spotlight. It's such a pleasure for me to have so many wonderful clients that want to share what actually goes on in the reality of the stuff that we do. So I'm really excited about today's guest. This is a little bit like our last LinkedIn Live, but in such a more distinct way. So this is about redefining success and sustainable leadership in the world that's in constant change. So I'm excited to introduce in a moment my pal, my client, my friend, the next president of the United States of America, Lauren Novy. She is a strategic marketing leader with more than 15 years of experience already, driving growth and transformation across Fortune 500 organizations and also franchise businesses. So different things, but equally important. Throughout her career, she's built and led teams. That's something really important to her. She's navigated significant organizational change and developed a real passion for helping people grow and succeed. And one of the reasons why I wanted Lauren on today is because her story is different than a lot of the coaching stories that we hear. And one of the things I was saying to Lauren beforehand, one of my goals is just for people who watch to understand this type of coaching is different. It's not just get a promotion, get a raise, get a new job. This is not a burnout story. This is not a story of quitting corporate America or blowing up her life. You know, that's sort of my story. And this is not a story of starting all over. The success was already there. The promotions were already there. The performance was already there. But when that happens, this more interesting question becomes available, which is, what happens when you've done everything you thought you were supposed to do, checked all the boxes, and you start asking yourself whether that definition of success that you've been pursuing and you've been fighting for and you've been grinding about is actually your own. So that's something I can relate to very deeply. And over the last year or so, I've really had the privilege of working with Lauren as she's explored that question, explored her definition of leadership. And today we're going to talk about ambition, hustle culture, uncertainty, what it means to build a career and a life, very important, that feel aligned and not just perfect or successful on paper. So, Lauren, welcome. So happy to have you here.
Hey, no, any opportunity to spend time with you and talk about leadership, sign me up. So
Exactly. So there's so much I want us to talk about. So in lieu of sort of small talk, let's just jump into the first topic, which is one that I think a lot of people can relate to, which is the what's next trap. So when we first started working together, you'd built a successful career. I just read some of your accolades. This wasn't a case of I blew it all up, I'm trying to start all over. What made you start questioning whether that was enough?
Yeah. So I think, as you mentioned, I felt myself in this, 15-year rut in my career where I was doing all the things. I was following what I thought was the formula for success. You work hard, you get the outstanding rating, you get promoted, you move to the next role, and you just keep doing it. And yep. I was great at playing the game, and I could continue playing the game if that's what made me happy. But what I was really starting to zoom out and think about is, is this really my definition of success? And, it's really, you felt like you were kind of in this rat race of like, you needed to reach the next milestone versus being happy and really celebrating the success in each moment. And what I love about, your program and, working with you is that, I'm asking such different questions now. Like, what is my purpose? What kind of life do I want to live? Not what is that next milestone that I need to reach? Because the milestones will never stop, it just keeps going.
Yeah, right, exactly. And if you're the CEO, then there's a CEO of a bigger company or a different company. So I really appreciate that. And that's one of the things that I talk a lot about when people ask, who's your ideal client? And I say it's generally not a 22-year-old, only because at that age, you're still under the belief that once I get to this title or this raise or this company or this whatever, then everything will feel just fine, right? And these are external validators, and you kind of have to go through them yourself. Because if I just said, oh, that's not going to feel the way you want it to feel. Kind of need to do it yourself a whole bunch of times and then be like, what else is there? What's next? What do I want? So what was it? It was certainly not burnout. I don't believe in that term for you at all. But was it just a shift in this doesn't feel the way I thought it would feel that brought you, to finding me and doing this work?
Yeah. I mean, I think it definitely was just kind of what's next, and also what really makes me happy, because I'm a very motivated, driven, ambitious person. That's not going to stop. It's a core part of who I am. But I think it's like, how do I channel that ambition to something that I'm really passionate about? And that's not the career milestone. That's not, the project at work. That's, like you were saying, it's who I am as a person and who I want to be known for, the impact that I want to make, the people that I want to help. And that is, really a holistic look at things. And I think that's also a big part of it is, we can't separate career from life. And it really is like you as a total person. And I think that's another huge piece that I love about, what I've discovered working together is, there's less of this separation and division that maybe I saw in the beginning of my career, and what a successful leader is like that. That's really changing, which I love. I think, it's so needed in this world.
That's it, right? So the conversation is shifting from achievement into one about purpose and fulfillment and building a life, not just a career, right? And defining, I can keep checking the boxes of what someone else is defining as success, the title, the role, the money, but what's my definition of success? And I have to, it obviously brings us right to a fond memory of mine, which is 4:30 a.m. So let's talk about her. Let's talk about 4:30 a.m. Lauren. I remember her well. I met her. I heard her. She was up before dawn. She was getting it all done. Daytime workday, Lauren was checking the boxes of the logistics and the execution. And 4:30 a.m. Lauren was doing the strategy so that she could execute while also being married, having a dog, working out, exercising, meal prepping. We could go into a whole conversation about meal prepping, right? So you were up before dawn, also listening to business podcasts and answering emails and optimizing every minute of every day. And that's something I relate to so much that it's crazy. And from the outside, that's really impressive. And there's a lot of people and certainly coaches that would say, wow, okay, cool. You have all the discipline. You've got willpower. You're working so hard. Isn't that great? And also, we noticed that actually wasn't the key to success, right? What did you believe all that hustle was giving you at the time? What was the plan there?
Yeah, I mean, first off, 4:30 Lauren was a vibe. She got more done than anyone. I conquered the 5 a.m. club to the next level. And, it was so interesting because even when we worked together and you're like, okay, we need to look at things differently. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to buy into this. My identity is so tied to my work ethic. And so
Lauren, that's so important.
But I think that, I really thought hustle equaled success. I think it's, and it's not like anyone at work and any of the companies that I worked for, was telling me to do this, but I was, I think it's a straight A student mentality of, you need to say yes to everything. You need to, help everyone out. You need to carry the burden of, anything that's going on with your team, because that's what it takes to be a leader. And that's what you need to keep, doing and showing up. And, I unfortunately don't burn out. So I could keep doing it every day. And it's just
those of us who are a little bit older than you are like, those were the days. Yeah, there's no burnout. You have an endless supply. But when did you start to realize that hustle and leadership are not the same thing?
Yeah. I think so. What I love about, working with all of the coaches, in your program is that, there was a different approach to how to slow down and why slowing down is important. We did meditation, working with Diane and, somatic healing, and even thinking about, okay, when you're doing bar method every day and you're trying to perfect every
Right.
exercise. You know, you need to breathe. You need to make sure that you're like present and thinking about things, or everything, you know, we talked about in terms of stepping back. I think that, you know, that I was resistant at first, but then as I started to change my morning routine and really think about, okay, how am I intentional about what is the clarity, and how do I need to show up as, you know, my best self,
Right.
like throughout the day, that step back and that clarity, you know, really showed me that what I was doing before in that hustle culture was I was reacting. So I was you know, I was following the wheel, I was doing all the things, but then I wasn't taking that step back to really say, okay, where do I need to show up? How do I need to be as a leader? And, you know, when you think about work, what is my role, you know, on the team? And then where I need my team to show up. And
Right.
my job is not to show up and do everything for them. And not that I was doing that, but I think that it's really about making sure that, you know, my role is creating clarity and empowerment for them, not carrying the burden of, you know, the entire team.
And it's the shift from reactivity to proactivity that's going to make the difference. It's not what time you wake up in the morning. I just want to pause for a second and talk about meditation, because I thought meditation was for hippies and like gurus. You know, I was like, oh, thank you. I'm a type A hustler. Like, I've run a marathon without training. I don't. And so just to give a little moment for meditation. So it's not about being relaxed. That's what Lauren and I both had to learn. It's not about being relaxed while you're meditating. If that happens, cool. It's like having a runner's high when you're running. But the point of meditation is to change your neural pathways. So if you automatically are hustler, that you give your brain a chance to say, like, maybe I could be strategic, and maybe strategy and hustle don't always go hand in hand. Right. So it's not just this thing that we do because it's nice to relax. It's this thing that we do to be more efficient as leaders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's not fun at first because it's this quiet time with your brain. Mm-hmm. But, you know, one of the biggest shifts I watched happen with you specifically, and you know, sometimes I felt like it was like watching myself in reverse, is when you stopped trying to carry everything. Now, this is not the point of the story, you guys, but here's what happens. Lauren stops waking up at 4:30 in the morning. She gets more strategic. She gets more proactive. She acts like a leader instead of a boss. She starts to define her concept of fulfillment and purpose and legacy. And then poof, the external things start showing up as well. Right? So, and at that point, it's still awesome. It's never a bummer to win awards ever. Right. But the definition of leadership changes, and then it allows for more room for you to show up authentically, for your team to show up authentically. And it also helped you, I think, to look at your definition of a boss and a leader as well, and sort of have an understanding and maybe an empathy, but also just like the bosses are just people who put their pants on one leg at a time in the morning, right? And this idea of like perfecting anything is sort of a fool's errand. So what did you learn about, there's also in any organization at any time, the only constant is change, right? Like that's the rule of life. Mm-hmm. So you changed your definition of leadership and showed up differently. And you also have helped to define for those below and above you, right? We don't talk enough about managing up, how leadership cannot have to look like the martyr and the hustler and all of that. Mm-hmm. So what did you learn about leadership through change? And let me be clear about what I mean by that. What changed in how you lead? What changed in how you approach leadership? What does sustainable leadership look like now?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, us working together and just how the world is changing and how organizations are having to shift, it was kind of this perfect mix, because I think that, you know, whatever organization you're in right now, I think that, you know, you're probably going through some kind of change, and, you know, leaders are having to show up differently. And for me, that really meant, you know, not just having to step more into that player coach, you know, mentality, which I think was already there. I think that's, you know, something important that everyone has to do. But then also, I think it was really allowing myself to step away from this sense of perfection and this sense of I have to put on this persona of who a leader is and just be my authentic self. And I think that, when we're going through hard things, or, like even I had something come up with my dog Buddy, the past couple of weeks. And so like being authentic about, hey, I'm not in my best place right now because, Buddy's struggling and that is, weighing on me, and being able to be authentic about that and real, I think, really is something that's so needed in leadership. And I love the fact that I feel like people are bringing their full self to work.
Yes.
I think, like you said, I think that it's so important to realize being a leader is not a title. It's not being in a certain role. It's not even being at work. It's being your best self all day, every day. And I think that that's also, thinking about how do you be a best leader to your friends, your partner,
yes,
your dog,
of course, your neighbors, your community. And last person I had on here was Greg Hoover, who's your buddy and mine. His whole book is about lead anyway. Don't wait till you get the promotion or the raise. Don't wait until you're in the right room. And you just touched on something that is basically like the cornerstone of my entire belief system, which is vulnerability is our superpower. Telling the truth is what actually makes us great leaders and great humans and great people to be around. Because yes, we can learn a lot from the perfect, deity of a boss who's never has a hair out of place, never messes anything up, but we live in real life.
Yeah.
And one of the pieces of feedback I often get about my coaching style is that I'm very real. And it's so that to me taught me that trying to be polished and perfect is not, maybe it works for some people, but meanwhile, back at the ranch, we're all just people trying to do the best we can. Exactly. And it isn't in waking up at 4:30 in the morning and hustling through it and preparing more and perfecting that our truest sense of leadership comes out. It's when we're real humans. My dog is sick. I'm a little overwhelmed. I got in a fight last night or I stayed up too late because I watched the Knicks game. But that's all the things right now. So leadership is not, it's not carrying everything. It is about understanding what you are. So Lauren happens to be somebody who has a lot of skills in a lot of areas. And I remember saying to her, what if you defined your purpose not by what you're good at, by what you really enjoy doing and leading that way? We're pretty sure if you give Lauren a project, she'll get it done and it'll probably get an A++ and 2 stars. But leadership is creating the clarity about who you are, what you want, what you enjoy, what works for you, what doesn't, all of those things, so that delegation then becomes that much easier because you're like, yeah, I could do that, but that's not my best skill set, but this is.
Yeah. No, I think the other thing, in terms of just, going through change and not carrying the burden as a leader too, that I want to, share something that I heard the other day, which I think is so important for probably a lot of people listening, is that, with your team too, in terms of carrying that burden, they're not always looking for you to solve all of the problems. I think it's very much of like this question of like, are you looking for me to help solve, the challenge, or are you just looking me to listen? And I think that that's also in terms of showing up, you don't need to have all the answers.
Oh, Lauren, that's so good. And by the way, it's something I have to say to friends because the coach in me wants to fix them. And sometimes, do you just want to like vent, or do you want me to help you problem solve? And just asking that question clarifies a lot in a lot of different conversations. Probably works well in marriage as well. So I think we've kind of talked about this, but I want to make really clear because I think this is a message that is so important. You've become really clear about the difference between growth and promotion. And I think a lot of people confuse the two. And maybe even you did. And certainly at one point I did. So let's talk about that. What can we control? What can we not control? How do we continue to grow when a business condition is uncertain or in flux? Or, what does that look like today that's different than it was?
Yeah, no, I think, maybe it's just that first definition for me when I entered corporate America, but it stuck with me that I had this belief that, growth meant rising the ranks. And so, really, you had to get that max promotion, you had to get increased scope, to be growing. But there's so many things, like you said, outside of the control when it comes to promotions. There's seasons, where the conditions just don't support that. And so that doesn't mean, there needs to be this mindset of waiting, and, you can't grow unless you're promoted. And I think that it's really about looking at growth of what we can control, the skills that we're building, the relationships that we have, how we're showing up, and the impact that we have. And so, and that shift is really freeing, because then it's all things that you can control and you can feel good about every day that you're continuing to work on. And like you said, like, the external factors come as a result of doing that, but it's not the sole focus, and it's not the end all be all. And I think that is just really a freeing shift that I hope everyone can find.
One of the key things, and it's a term that I use all the time in coaching now, that you either came up with, or maybe we came up with it together, but this idea of not taking things as personally. Right? If you don't get a promotion, it might not be that your boss hates you and the world's conspiring against you. There's so much we don't know about. Or you don't get the title, there's so much we don't know that's happening behind the scenes or elsewhere. But I also want to go back to something we just talked about earlier, which is clarity. So once you understand what your skills are and what your strengths are, you can be honing those, whether you get a promotion or not, whether you stay at a company forever or you stay another month. Like, there's always, interpersonal relationships, cross-departmental. That's something that, Lauren, you're really great at. Lauren's really great at leading, but she's also really great at helping to teach and learn and mentor and coach. Like, you don't need a promotion to do that. And let's be honest, in this day and age, a lot of time promotions just come with more work. So I think that not waiting for the conditions to be perfect, for everything to be just the way it's supposed to be, has unlocked an opportunity to probably grow more in the last couple of years than maybe before that. I mean, I think you were honing skills for a long time, but I think, the EQ, the emotional intelligence, the sort of the self-awareness, the knowing what's your side of the street and what you can control, and then being cognizant that results, other people's opinions, their reactions, promotions, budgets, all of that stuff, timing, sometimes it's out of our control.
Yeah.
I want to say one more thing, which is that in when Lauren talks about Rebecca Babcock coaching, she refers to the team, right? Because it's not just me, it's a team, as her board of directors. And I just think that's so brilliant. And whether it's with my team or people are finding it on their own or whatever, why has that community mattered? And we're referring to other coaches, but also Lauren's part of a mastermind of like-minded leaders of all different ages and, totally different industries and sex and denominations and politics. But together we're talking about this kind of stuff. We're not talking about how to get a promotion. We're not talking about how to get a new title. Yeah. So why has this outside perspective of this board of directors been so valuable for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think just the overall holistic approach of everything that you do. I've done a lot of different leadership programs and coaching before, but it's very cookie cutter and, meant for a broad audience. And what I love is, like, this is all personalized for me and, what I need, and how you can, help me to be successful in my life. And, I think that the holistic approach and having these different coaches, whether it's Clay helping me mind map everything that's ever happened in my life and how it connects to why I decided to take this career path and, make sense of the fact that I was an elementary school teacher to an HR professional to, a marketing professional. He's like, this makes sense. And, oh, by the way, you're writing a book. And I'm like, no, Clay, I'm not writing a book.
Not right now, Clay.
But
I'm getting up at 4:30 in the morning to write a book before work starts.
Or Susan, who, just is encouraging me to think differently and dream bigger than I've ever, wanted. I think that it's just very different from, just thinking about your career. It's really thinking about, your full life. And so going back to, the mastermind and what this community does. And I think the evolution of the board of directors is like personal board of directors is in the past. I thought that had to be people who had impressive titles at work or people who were peers in the same industry as me. And what I love about this community is I would have never crossed paths with a lot of the folks that, are part of your community.
With a doctor. With a healer,
And I think what's so great is that, I would have thought in the past that, there's nothing we would relate about, or there's not, maybe a connection that we can make. But I think that it's really taught me, again, this whole idea that leadership is for everyone. And also that, we might not have the same life experiences, but we have the same, fears and emotions and things that we're going through. And I think that really, it's great to have this community of people that you can just be real with. And I think like, especially in career, like a lot of times I really encourage everyone to have a community outside of just your direct team, your boss. You need to have those people to go to. It could be your personal friends, but, having people who, really are there for you. And that's what, your community does.
Thank you for saying that, because that was the purpose of creating it. So that means the world to me. But I also, I'll sometimes have a prospective client that will say like, well, are you a coach for lawyers? Are you a coach for doctors? Are you a coach for marketers? Are you a coach? I have worked with everybody in every industry, and underneath what we feel is terminally unique to our job or our role or our struggle is a truth that, we're overthinking, we're overwhelmed, we're resentful and frustrated, we're over people pleasing, we're sucking it up. And that's a universal feeling. And so is that feeling of I have a purpose and I'm not quite getting there yet. And so when we think it's unique to our career, we're really closing ourselves off to the opportunity of true connection as a life experience, right? So sadly, we're almost done, but there's so much, there's so many things. Going back to, so Lauren was mentioning some of the coaches on my team, and Clay's sort of our thought coach, and Susan does career transition. And I always meet with all my clients first, and then I do debriefs with each of the coaches about kind of like my expectation of what they're doing. So the first time that Susan, who's a recruiter as well as a career transition coach, the first time she met with Lauren, she's like, well, that's the future president of a company. Like she just was so, because I was still sort of like, I'm not sure, Susan, I don't know if she's going to let go of this hustle culture. And she's like, no, this is going to run the world. So, the other cool thing about a different perspective for my sake is that other coaches can see things I can, and I can see things they can. And I really appreciate you talking about it being customized. And it's not that cookie cutter is bad per se. It's just this is not about you, Lauren. This is a life statement that I often say. People are inherently lazy and selfish, right? So they don't do something unless it's going to help them, it affects them, or benefits them in some way. So when you do a lecture and it's all sort of ethereal, that's cute. But then the person walks out of that room and goes like, I have no idea how to apply that to my life, right? And so there's this thing that happens when you customize it, is that I know stuff about Lauren and Lauren knows stuff about me that go way beyond a corporate setting, because it all comes together to figure out how we became who we are, what the patterns are underneath the surface, and that's really hard to do when things aren't customized. And on the other side of it is a person who can feel fulfilled, not just at work, but at home and with their friends and with their dog and with their husband and at the gym and all these sorts of things. So if someone's watching today and they're feeling successful on paper, but they're feeling constantly like they're chasing the next thing, or maybe they get the thing and then they go, oh, that wasn't really it. Maybe it's the next one. What would you say to them?
I would say you need to put a Post-it on your desk that says success is not reaching the next milestone. It's showing up as your best self every day. And that's what you can control, and that's what you need to do.
Darn, that was good. So complete this sentence. I used to think success was
a title.
Ooh, yeah. That is so real, right? Of course, that's what success is. It's a white picket fence. It's a title. It's a, today, I think success is
the impact I'm making every day.
Girl. Yep. This is Lauren, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. You are a mentor and a coach yourself. So everybody should connect with you. Lauren creates incredible LinkedIn content. So connect with her on LinkedIn. You guys can always connect with me on LinkedIn or my website, but you can find that through LinkedIn. And I just want to give you one more big shout out. It's so heartwarming as a coach to not have conversations where it's like, what did you learn from, like, this woman is a fully formed, amazing leader out there doing amazing stuff that, by the way, I was nowhere near where you were in definitions of success at your age. So it's just like so exciting to see it happening in the next generation a lot sooner. So thank you again, Lauren. I know everyone learned a lot from this conversation, including myself.
Oh.